All right, hello everyone. Looks like we got people trickling in, but I think most of the folks are here. So we're gonna get this thing started. So I am Dr. Dilemma from the Paradise Motel, uh, also on the camp support team and peers. I'm your breakout producer today, and I'm really excited about this one. We got a really great group of panelists here today, and I've gotten to know them over the past few weeks as we've put this together, and I think you're going to just love this group of people. The format today is I'm going to do a little bit of intro here, and you'll be happy to know that I'm going to be passing it off hosting duties to Coop, who's also on our panel. He'll be asking, they'll be introducing themselves, talking a little bit about their camps. Then there's going to be a little bit of panel Q&A back and forth. And then we want to allow a good amount of time at the end for comments. Is anyone watched the Nerds podcast would remember with their questions and comments or either, because I feel like we're going to have a lot of people with their own ideas here that might want to talk about that as well as ask questions, and we can figure some of these things out together. Now, just to get us started off, a few years back, I was asked to join the cultural direction setting project in one of the groups, and it was a really amazing experience. They collected lots of information from the community. A lot of people were interviewed. They turned in surveys. And the phase that I was in, we kind of took all of that. We read through reams of it. We came together in different groups. We distilled all this information. We had placers. We had camp leads. We had staff members. We read through everything. We argued a lot. We tried to distill. My group was the one that was dealing with theme camp criteria and trying to define not just what a theme camp is, but what is it that we were wanting to see in theme camps as they ask for placement. Some of the big questions that that we had in the surveys, and then I do the camp support help desk. We see them come in a lot of times. Is what do y'all mean about some of these things? You want us to be unique. What does that mean to have a unique offering? Visual impact. What does that mean? What does a good frontage look like? Interactivity. How could we do interactivity in a new and an inventive way? Because there's 2,000 theme camps and we're all kind of doing the same thing. So we had lots of discussions about that. And I'll put a link into it at the end to the theme camp criteria that came up with these. And if you look at the slide deck, some of the more involved descriptions of all of these will be there. But these are the topics that our panel is going to kind of delve into. And I think this past few years have definitely been really different, and things have been shaken up quite a bit. I know a lot of camps didn't come last year. My camp took a year off. A lot of camps are not just getting bigger, but getting smaller too. Y'all have seen this before when I've done some of the camp frontages, but this was my theme camp. Our very first year, you could pick this apart. Everything we did wrong there, like using a parachute as a shade structure, gets caught by wind and it gets blown away. I think they mentioned that earlier in the plenary that the very first center camp tried to do the same thing. We grew over the years. One of the things that I always tell camps is you don't have to do everything the very first year. And I think this is our one of our biggest year. We had almost 70 people. We had a new camp sign, a trailer, and a lot of stuff going on. And when we did great the year after COVID, because everyone wanted to come back, but then last year we took a year off because we just couldn't get the same group of people together. We came out and I just brought our beat up old RV and set up our own camp, and we just played music for passerby and open camping. And this year we're going to go down to 20 people. So there might be some camp leads out there this year that are thinking, we want to reinvent ourselves, or maybe we don't want to be as big, or we want to do something different. And that's enough of me talking, just to set up kind of where we're going today. And I'm going to pass it off to someone who's much more eloquent than me, who's going to introduce to our panel. Coop, take it away and let's start it.
Awesome. Thanks you so much, Dr. Dilemma. It's so good to be with you today. And Dr. Dilemma, I just want to say thank you for producing this breakout and all the hard work you've done behind the scenes. You've assembled a really great group of people. Really appreciate that. And do a quick shout out to Nancy Bowie, who has produced the entire weekend or day today. I'm really thankful for that. My name is Michael Cooper. Like Dr. Dilemma said, I have been collecting playa names over the years. Right now, I go by 3 of them. I may have met you and used those names: Uncle Daddy, Snack Daddy, or the Governor. I was the Comfort and Joy Mayor for 10 years. I also camped with Beard House. And for the last 14 years, I've been helping run the Paiute Food Drive and Fundraiser. And if any of you want to get involved with a fundraiser or the food drive this year, please reach out. We're definitely looking for help and volunteers this year. And we'd love to get more camps to participate in the food drive if possible. Comfort and Joy, and by the way, for panelists, we're going to say click when we want Dr. Dilemma to move the slides. Comfort and Joy is 22 years old, and when we were looking at design and frontage and interactivity, one of the things that we really had to keep in mind is how do those 3 things go together? And that's one of the things we're going to be asking the panelists today as well. But I'll just share, this is our courtyard, and one of the things we had to really factor in is we had 8 different venues. We had multiple artists that were participating in the different art pieces here. We also, and click Dr. Dilemma, we also had to accommodate other venues like the Pink Gym, and you can click again. We had to accommodate large events. This is a collaboration with Boz and the Ministry of Flow for a fire jam. And we also were the hosts for the World Naked Bike Ride. And so our courtyard literally had to accommodate 500 people. And so we had to really factor all that in when we were designing our frontage, interactivity, and design together. Let's go to the next one. The other thing that we really had to keep in mind, and we encourage people to do as well, is think about your camp during the day and at night. It can look very different or it can look the same. We designed this to be colorful and attractive both day and night, to be whimsical and playful and fun. This year was a garden theme that you see here. But just want to show that, when you approach design, interactivity, and programming, it's really important to think about all those factors to make it the most magical experience you can for interactivity. And Dr. Limmer was saying earlier that he made a lot of mistakes along the way, that sort of thing. We probably did too. Everything from dealing with a 47-person norovirus epidemic or outbreak, aerialists falling during their performances and injuring themselves, contaminated water systems where we had to buy a brand new water tank and pump on playa, and also a suicide in our camp that ended up on Fox News in 2009. And so we we've learned a lot from the years. We'd like to share all our wisdom with you today. My job as the host is to highlight our panelists and make them shine. But before I switch over to that, just a couple things, how I've been also involved in Burning Man. I also served on the cultural direction sitting team for strengthening our neighborhoods. Now I coach and advise camp leaders if they want to change their camps, reinvent themselves, that sort of thing. I also support and really help Paiute elder Dean Barlis, who blesses the land at Burning Man before the burn, after the burn, and also blesses the temple every year. So the spiritual side of Burning Man is really important to me, and that factors into your unique offerings as well as the spiritual side. Let's go ahead and introduce our panelists. I've got a really great group of people. We're first going to go to Giovanni Beckford. We're going to ask Giovanni to introduce himself, tell a little bit about his camp, and then the part of design, interactivity, and programming that you geek out on, and your biggest challenge with those.
Great. Thanks, Scoop. So, everyone, my name is Giovanni Beckford. I am the camp lead for Nobo House. I'm based in New York, and this will be my seventh burn upcoming. My first burn was in 2016, and my most favorite burn was the year we all got stuck in the mud. Our camp, we focus on holistic wellness. We didn't always start out that way. First, our original camp name was Camp No Boundaries, and then we rebranded the camp to Nobo House. Our original mission was to help people reduce their self-limiting beliefs, get out their comfort zone. And that was all fine and dandy, and all the interactivity that we had with that included murder mystery dinner, live action role playing, and those were great interactivity. But after a while, we wanted to evolve, and a lot of that was inspired by some of the harsh years. And so as we went redesigning our camp, we also realized that even though things in the playa can be ethereal, what we want to focus on is creating a anchor point for the camp. So if you can go back to the original slide with the logo, we worked on redesigning our symbol that would reflect us on playa and off playa. So our camp, so right now you're looking at our overall frontage of the camp, and the frontage of the camp is what you use to describe or welcome people to come to your camp. So we were placed on 630 and D, and this frontage was designed from our original logo, which was in a prior slide that you could see a little bit later. And then if you can go to the next slide. And so the interactivity that we did this year was a steam room, a cold room, massages, hair braiding and hair washing, as well as a smoothie bar and live music. And so this steam room was in collaboration with Burley, aka Wonder Boy, and we created this steam dream experience. And so we wanted to bring wellness to the playa and create something that people could rejuvenate for on playa. And that's what we wanted to experience, because when the year of the scorching sun of 2022, we realized that we needed more things outside of having a bar on playa that people can discover to feel better on playa. Next slide. And as we started to think about what experiences that we wanted to do, that first comes with creating an overall layout. And so this is a program called SketchUp. And in SketchUp, we use this to do the 3D mockups for our camp layout. And as you can see, on the right side is the front of the house, and on the left side is the back of house. And when making this design, all of these things that factor into creating your camp layout in terms of how many people that are in your camp, how many vehicles that you're going to have in your camp, what type of shading that you want to use, as well as if you're going to have like a communal kitchen or public kitchen, and everything else factors into the density of your camp and how much interactivity that you have on the public facing sides of your camp. Some of the most challenging things that we faced in terms of figuring out layout and interactivity was actually around how much labor that we wanted to expose our campers to when we're building up the camp. And that was one of the reasons why we actually changed our interactivity from our original camp when we were doing murder mystery dinners to this year where we're doing wellness experiences. So when we were doing murder mystery dinners, we had a number of campers who were actors as well as helping within the kitchen. And after we did early build when the event opened, plus doing all that interactivity, a lot of our campers were utterly exhausted. And so we wanted to switch to interactivity that most of the labor was on the infrastructure itself, as opposed to campers having to do a ton of different shifts. And so through making that trade-off, we created an environment that people wanted to return to, and we also created an environment that many people could visit throughout different hours of the day. The things that I geek out the most on, I would say, when it comes to camp planning is the systems behind things. So making the administrative stuff easier so that we can have more time to brainstorm and be more creative when it comes to the interactivity that we put on Playa. And so I'll dive into a little bit more stuff later, but now I'd like to pass it off to the next speaker.
Great. Thank you so much, Giovanni. We're going to now say hello to Molly Murphy, who goes by Swoon, and she's with End of the Line in Church of Insubordination. Go ahead, Molly.
Thanks, Coop. Thanks, Giovanni. Hey, everyone. Really happy to be here today and share some of this insight with you all. So I'm Molly, she, her pronouns. I go by Swoon, West Coast Swoon, different from East Coast Swoon. And I want to share a little bit about my background and history here. I've been burning since 2007. I originally was part of Black Rock Yearbook by chance, and so I got a bit of a taste of kind of running that and the interactivity from the get-go, and learned actually a lot in that first year. And since then, my burns have evolved. And in 2011, my partner and I actually built a mutant vehicle, which I will show here in a moment. And our camp has evolved. Predominantly, we've been pretty small. I think at the largest, we were about a 40-person camp. And at our smallest, we were probably around 10 or 12 or so. But that's been going strong again since 2011. I'm calling in also from Vallejo, California, so in the Bay Area. And click. All right, so I'll start with End of the Line. I had a technical difficulty, and I wanted to kind of show you the history and trajectory of some of our past camps, but I'm just going to start with where we ended up last year. Prior to this, when our camp was the Church of Insubordination, we had a gigantic cathedral, it was called. It was essentially a giant like hexayurt made into a sort of cathedral. It was fun while it lasted. It was created in a couple of weekends by one of our campmates, and it was really great for like shelter. It was great for frontage, for people to be able to identify us. It didn't hold up super well, and the schlepping to and from or trying to store on playa was challenging. So that's a whole other piece to consider, is, whether you flat pack and how much you have and how much you're bringing. So last year, our campmates, we rebranded to End of the Line and built this facade here in my yard. And then if you can see behind, there's basically like a giant Costco barn. And then inside, it's all very sort of Old West looking. So we had a bar, and then basically there's a whole scavenger hunt inside. So even if no one in our camp is present and we're not doing any events or serving anything, there was still some interactivity there where people could go in and they'd be led through these clues, kind of, blind tiger style, to figuring out just some history about Burning Man, about Larry, a lot of little nuggets included there. Another thing that we really wanted to include, since we're so close to like Kidsville, were activities for kids. I'm a mom. And so basically between the slats and the floor there are all these little metal things, and the kids could get little fishing rods and do some magnetic fishing out of there. We had cornhole, and then we had some other version of like grown-up games for later at other parts of the day or behind a bit more of a facade. Click. I'm going to try not to deep dive too much here, but the train in this photograph, also you can see the lovely Lord Snort in the foreground. That is our mutant vehicle. So predominantly now that is what my partner and I focus on, is just getting that to the playa and kind of everything we do around that. But I have in recent years given up trying to both run and organize our entire camp and have the mutant vehicle. So if anyone is interested in chatting more, has questions about like a mutant vehicle camp or support camp as part of a hub, you can reach out to me. Some things I geek out about. Are we having a technical issue, or are we all good? Okay, I'm gonna keep going. I geek out about planning. I love to, similar to Giovanni, is just like, I really like to have things organized on the back end. I like to try and plan early. I also love for interactivity. And my challenges are just getting people to participate, both pre-event and on playa, when everybody loves a great idea and has really fun ideas, but then getting people to actually commit and get out of bed or get back on time to host events, and kind of herding the cockroaches, as we call it, is a challenge. Back to you, Coop.
Thank you so much, Molly. I think a lot of us can relate to that. And thanks for teaching us a brand new term, yurt cathedral. It's the first time I've ever heard of that. So really appreciate that. Now we're going to go and meet Riven, who's Whiskey Jackal from Doggenheim Gallery.
Hey, thanks, Coop. Thanks, Molly. Can everybody hear me all right? Yeah? All right, cool.
We
So
can.
I'm Riven. My playa name is Whiskey Jackal. I've been coming to the burn since 2016. 2016 and 2017, I just kind of open camped with a bunch of friends. Going into the year for 2019, we kind of got together and said, hey, we can do something. Let's be interactive, more than just coming in and interacting with other people's camps. Let's bring an offering to the playa. So the idea for Doggenheim Gallery was born. So Doggenheim is a 24/7 interactive camp. We are a small camp comprised of furries from 4 different countries and 4 US states. We always want to be roughly around 20 to 25 people. And, we try to culturate new folks to the burn and get probably about 30% new people year over year. We kind of want to be a starter camp, get people comfortable, and then allow them to kind of blossom into burner culture and start their own things. So basically, when we run a camp, we put together this large shade structure. It's pretty open. If you click, if you could go next slide, click. Yeah. So we started out with this idea of, we had no idea what we wanted to do. So we wanted to make kind of an inviting space that we could reuse. So we created this large shade structure where people could come in, get out of the heat. And we figured, hey, if our camp didn't work out, we could repurpose it and figure out something else. But the fact of the matter is, it was a pretty successful idea. We have a bunch of canvases and canvas walls throughout the structure, along with paint pens, markers, etc. So people can come in, get out of the sun or get away from the party at night, just kind of add things to our walls. And then we also do have a bar that is active when campers are in. So basically, we'll help kind of divine people's inner animal, give people cold brew coffee or cold beer, help them cool off, get out of the sun. And we are not a bar first and foremost, though. We definitely just want to focus on what can we do that is interactive, that's a lot. How can we get our frontage to deal or to help support that? And how can we really give something to the playa where then we as a small camp can go interact with other people's camps? And one of the ways that we thought about doing this is rather than just having this fully enclosed structure that you have to walk in through the front, even though we have these kind of like gallery curtains, we decided that we just wanted to change our frontage so that it was a completely open structure, so that you could look in, it was welcoming, it was inviting. One of the things that I like to think about and geek out on is the flow of how are events happening, how are people moving from A to B, how do you use a small space effectively and make it warm and inviting? And we thought that a good way was to basically just make it open. Click. So here you can see we're just kind of chilling. We've got a couple of people in there, but this is a good cross section of what's going on with our camp. You can see kind of the cool S's over in the back right. That's our bar. We kind of have the secondary theme of the cooler stuffy S that came up over the years. But yeah, we really just want to make a good interactive space where people can come in, feel welcome. At night, we have soft lighting. Click. And, it just kind of feels warm and inviting. You can come in, get out of the party. You start to see drawings around, art supplies everywhere, so you can kind of go and interact with it. I think that one of the things that we have had a hard time with, despite having the space, is just figuring out, how do we want to use it? Because we have this 24/7 interactive space, but we've definitely experimented with having different events within our gallery space over the past several years. And I think it's just been pretty fun to use it for what it is, to catcall people in from off the street using some megaphones, get them off and get them interact or have some level of interaction. It's been pretty cool to come back year over year when we're setting up and just kind of walking in the street and hearing people go, "Oh man, it's Doggenheim. I love those guys." So I think that creating a warm, inviting space is super important to help drive traffic in from off the street, depending on what you want to do. And that's everything for me. Thanks, Scoop.
Awesome, Ribbon. Thank you so much. So good to see you. I think we're gonna have a revealing maybe later. We'll get to see your other face maybe. But maybe. Okay, great. Now we're gonna go to Abby Everywhere. She's with Camp Beaverton, and if you've been voicing any concerns or comments or messages or having technical issues, she's been handling that today. So really want to thank you for doing double duty, Abby. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much, Coop. Hi, everyone. I am Abby Everywhere. I am the mayor of Camp Beaverton, and when I'm not in Beaverton doing beaver things with 60 of my closest friends, I am one of the core leads with Burn Perimeter Support. We are the human fence around our beautiful art burns, keeping the human element in the burning of the man, and all of the other art burns that you see on Playa, and keeping the fences out of that. And if anyone's looking for a great entry level volunteer thing, join us at Burn Perimeter Support. It's really magical to see the art burn through the eyes of your fellow citizens. So for those who don't know about Camp Beaverton, we are a legacy queer theme camp. We are a camp for queer women, trans folks, and non-binary folks. And we provide many things to the city, but our biggest offering is our 24/7 safer space for all women. So while Beaverton is a safer space, and when I say that is really like a ongoing practice. It's an acknowledgement that these places don't just become safe because you put a sign up. It's an ongoing intentional practice, and a way to like constantly evaluate your community values and mission in order to best serve your community. So Beaverton is a safer space for queer women, trans folks, and non-binary folk. But our Beaver Dome is a 24/7 safer space for all women on Playa. So it is the only space of its kind that exists on Playa, and it's really unique in that way. And so one of the things that we geek out on at Beaverton is really how to design our interactivity, the things that we offer to our fellow Black Rock citizens, while keeping in mind radical inclusion and also having and holding a container that is inherently exclusive. And what does that look like to continue welcoming the rest of Black Rock City while having this space for a specific subset of our population? And we do that in a variety of ways. So you'll see here in this layout that we've got this entire front part on the left bottom side is our whole public facing frontage. And the big geodesic dome that you see is the Beaver Dome, which is a space that is exclusively for all women on Playa. But all of this other stuff is our public frontage. There's a little like yurt behind the bar shade structures. That is like a beavers only space. We call it the Beaver Lodge because biological beavers in the wild have to go underwater to get into the Beaver Lodge. And so it's where they live and only beavers can go in there. So that's like a little thing for our campers, but all the rest of this space is public facing, and it's designed to welcome Black Rock citizens of all gender, of all backgrounds, of all creeds into our space to let them know who we are and what we're about and why we're at Black Rock City. So we've got, you can see like the Playa Tech bike racks there. We've got a fire pit there, which includes a lot of open space for fire safety, because I care about that, and so do my campmates. And then we've got this really large beaver bar. We host happy hours that are open to everyone. They're called Clit Tails. So if you're on Playa this year, come by and see us Monday through Wednesday. That'll be in the evening just after dusk. And then we've got a fire lane space and more area to park bikes on the other side of our Beaver Dome, because we host a very large queer femme orgy every year, and so we have an art car pull up and fire dancers, and we have about like 500 to 600 people move through our camp every year on that one night during that event. So it's a massive undertaking, and we really have to consider that event and that offering to the city when we design our layout every year. If we want to move forward in the next slide, click. This is a kind of compressed view to fit into this frame of our frontage. It's a lot longer than that, but you can see kind of like everything in real life of what we just saw on the sketch. And click. This is a view from the other side at night, and this was actually taken on the night of our Strap-On-a-thon, our biggest event. You can see the dome here on the right, the bar there in the background below the beautiful full moon. This was the HPZ art car that came out to see us, and lots of bike parking along our fire lane, but not in our fire lane because that's important. Click. And this is one of our group photos from last year. These are my wonderful beavers, my dear friends, my community members. And it's really exciting to be a part of a group that really keeps our mission and values in mind and has beautiful opportunities each year to really live into that on Playa, even in ways that we didn't expect. So I'm excited to talk about that more when we move on with the panel. And these are just some reminders. While if you want to click to the next one, that's great. As your chat and tech moderator, I'm also here to remind you of these things. I know I dropped them in the chat at the beginning of our session, but please keep these in mind as we move on with our panel. And with that, I'm going to toss it back to you, Coop.
Great. Thank you so much, Abby. Really appreciate hearing everything there. And, Beaverton has been a sister camp for Comfort and Joy for, I think, 15, 20 years now. So really, really happy that you have your offering and to be able to support you guys over the years. So now we're going to go through 7 questions that the panelists and I talked about earlier this week. And really to share some of the things that, the questions that we know you're going to have, things you're always going to think about. Feel free to add your questions in the chat. Abby will keep track of those. And once we get through these questions, we'll bring your questions in as well. So the first question to the panelists, and feel free to, any of you come off mute and jump in, is how do design, frontage, and interactivity all work together? I know that Abby said some of that in her intro, that sort of thing. Who'd like to take that one? Giovanni, do you want that one?
Sure. So I would say design, interactivity, and frontage all come together because, one, the design represents what you as a camp symbolize. The interactivity represents what you do together as a camp. And the frontage is the kind of welcome mat to all those things. And so as you're building and cultivating your culture as a camp, you're creating this sort of interactivity that your campers would love to do anyways, and something that is a reflective of their identity. And as a frontage, you're trying to signal that to the public. So it's almost like a product market fit kind of thing, but interactivity burner, your people kind of thing. It's the thing that you're creating to attract the others. And so all those things come together to signal to the right people that there's a safe space, there's a home, there's these things that you enjoy to do together.
Great, fantastic. Molly or Riven, do you want to jump in?
I just add kind of thinking about them. Giovanni, that was excellent. Thanks for that. I think but just thinking of them holistically when you're planning, when you're doing all of your preparation, like I think Abby really mentioned it well as well. Like you have to think about the events that you're going to host maybe later in the week and how you're setting things up and design for all of that. And I just think that they're all very holistic. How are people going to interact with your space? How much room do you need? If you're hosting an event with, more than like 40 people or something larger, you have to think about where are people going to put their bikes? What are they going to do? And so I think that there's just a need to think about all of those things holistically, and design for that, prep for that, get your frontage out for that, get a bullhorn and call people in for that.
Great. Thanks so much, Molly. Oh, we get a reveal now.
Yeah,
Mr.
a
Jackal
little bit.
is unveiled. Great. Go ahead, jump in.
So yeah, just jumping on top of that, I think it goes back to when I was talking about flow, and I think that Molly kind of touched on this as well. You want to think about how people are going to move from A to B, how your events are going to draw people in, where people are going to be moving through your space. And you just want to think about everything holistically. There's no real science to it. It's kind of what feels right for you based off of what your camp is doing, how you want them to move through the available space as well.
And I'll just say from years of doing this, no matter what you plan, it's never going to end up that way. So have a little bit of patience and grace as it plays out.
Patience, grace, and fix it on the fly.
Exactly. Great.
Say patience, grace, and duct tape.
So true. Let's go to the second question. And that's really, how do you use your community values to inform and shape your design, frontage interactivity? And what are some of the considerations you have to bake in to that? Like, not only planning and design, but things like risks, things like that. And Abby, you mentioned this a little bit in your intro. Do you want to take that first?
Absolutely. Can you also, though, repeat the question? Because I'm collecting questions in the chat. So I want to
Absolutely.
make sure I'm answering you accurately.
Sure. How do your community values really shape your interactivity? And then what are some of the considerations you have to bake into your planning and design? Things like risks. We already talked about size of events, that sort of thing. But
Yeah, this is a big one for us because we have a lot of visitors in our camp 24 hours a day. And like we have a fire and we really have to think about where we place that, where we place our fuel to make sure they're not together, where we keep our expensive gear that we need to like survive out there, where it will be safe and accessible and not close to anything that could damage it. We think a lot about what safe spaces means, and that just doesn't just mean for like all women or specific to the dome. It also means for our campers, for the beavers that we are hosting and welcoming and offering a home. And sometimes it's not even just for beavers, it's for people who come to our camp to seek refuge. We've had people come directly with the help of rangers and other emergency services. We've had people come directly from Ranger Sanctuary to camp with us because they're fleeing a domestic violence situation on Playa and they need a place to land rather than leave the event. So we really think about these things when we design how our little home on Playa operates. So our frontage area is very specifically designed to welcome Black Rock citizens, but then our living area is really more private, and that's so that everybody feels like they have a sense of home, and so that when people come into camp and they're looking for somebody, we don't just lead them back into our little like beaver lodge. We invite them to sit down in our public area, we pour them a drink, we sit and chat with them, and then we go find whomever they may be looking for, and if they then want to like invite them in, we welcome that. But those are things that we consider a lot when we're like actually placing structures on our plot year after year. The other big thing is the fire lane. Like we've had a rainbow fire lane, like shaped like a rainbow aerially in the past, and that has actually like helped out a lot with traffic flow. But now that our camp is bigger and we're having bigger events and we're hosting art cars, we've had to like reinvent how we do our fire lane to just be able to accommodate more people and welcome more of the city into our space. So it's exciting to kind of see how it flows and shifts from year to year.
Great. Who else would like to jump in here on this one?
I could just add a bit about just including like kids or children, because I had mentioned that before. I don't know how relevant that is or going to be for anybody, but I, again, person who has brought my children to, or child, to Black Rock City, we are sort of mindful of having different events that are either like geared for kids or kid friendly or have other elements of interactivity. But I'm also very mindful about the experience of others on the playa, in terms of, you know, there's always something out there for everybody, but I think especially because we're close to Kidsville, like being kind of mindful of the full experience for people is just something I'm going to add here in case anybody has any other questions or wants to like DM me about that.
And I'll just add on to that. I'm so glad you brought that up because, you know, we had a space that was primarily for adults and adult activities, including a play space. And so we always had monitors there, make sure that kids didn't wander in. We had to place it so it wasn't near the road. You had to kind of filter through some areas before you got to that sort of thing. And so, you know, we definitely have to, you know, we want to look out for kids all the time, but we definitely want to steer them away from things that are for adults. Great. Fantastic. Let's go to the third question. How do you come up with your unique offering? What is enough interactivity? How do you determine? You know, sometimes I know that, you know, we plan more than we actually could staff, volunteer wise, that sort of thing. You know, things like that. And so just wonder what your thoughts are, what goes into your planning process at this time of the year.
Yeah, I can answer that. So our camp in the earlier years, our camp created like a brainstorming session. And we had a Figma board, or using Figma's new feature, FigJam, where you can have like post-it notes or any sort of application where you can have post-it notes and people can like upvote or add a plus sign or whatnot. And so we brainstormed all sorts of ideas that people would love to do. And then once we collected all those ideas, we voted on the top, so 5 or so ideas. And then from that, we sent that out to like our group chat of what resonated the most with people. And then we had to figure out the sort of what interactivity would this require if we're doing like a sound bath, what kind of space would that be held in? And we had to have noise considerations, that kind of thing. If we're having a murder mystery dinner, like we'll probably need a larger tent. So you can collectively brainstorm your ideas for interactivity and see what sort of infrastructure you need. What does this resonate with your campers? And then next comes like the labor requirements. How much people will this take to execute? And then figuring out, is this a daytime activity or is this a nighttime activity? And based on all those things, how many shift hours that you'll need. For us, we ran interactivity from Monday through Thursday, and we mostly had daytime midday activities as opposed to night activities. But if you're a sound camp or some other camps that are hosting like more adult themed parties, some of these things may skew later in the day. And you may be placed in a region or a sector that is more nighttime activity. So that's another thing you'll notice. Different sectors have different biases towards different types of activities. And so not only are you thinking about your frontage and your signage and your own culture, but what sector makes the sense for you to kind of be a part of. So that's another factor to take into consideration.
I'll
I'm
throw in
happy to
there
jump
too.
in there a little bit. After you, Dr. Dilemma.
I was gonna comment because Coop brings up a good question around right sizing your inactivity to the size of your camp. And there are camps that like you start off with 20 people, and then you next thing you know you're 30, and next thing you know you're 50, and you're doing the same thing that you've always done, and you have placement telling you, well, you guys aren't doing enough interactivity this year. And as our camp grew, we had our snow cones. And it took, it takes a certain amount of people to the snow cones. There's only some room for so many people, doing one snow cone machine. So then when we grew, we said, well, now we're going to have a spa, and we had this spa, and then they did a concierge desk, and it's something they do with the PCQ, the placement questionnaire this year. Is they kind of make you want to break down, like, all right, talk about the shifts and how many people it takes to really do the thing that you're doing. So it's a lot of common sense, but when you, as you mentioned, when you start to break it down into shifts and how many people you need to do it, it'll start to make sense to you pretty quickly. Because if you've got 100 people in your camp, you should be able to justify what those 100 people are doing, especially as you're growing.
Great.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ribbon.
Thank you. I was just going to jump in and say, our camp, we do this 24/7 interactive space, and our first year, we only did one event. We did a gallery opening party where we celebrated the artwork that people made on Playa, and we invited people to come back, have high-level art talk, have some wine, have some cheese, and just kind of have this hoity-toity art talk to celebrate the artwork that people had created in our space. And it was a huge success, but what we really want to do is take a step back and say, how else can we use this space other than just the gallery opening party? So I think that, when you have a space that's kind of like a canvas, if you will, you basically just see what you can do in it, do different things. We've had people in our camp do like intro to Qigong classes, which is a great space. It's kind of cool, like doing that surrounded by artwork that your fellow burners have created in this kind of like inspirational space. Like, think about how you could use your space, but maybe do so differently, right? And as far as staffing for people, definitely make sure that you're not planning too much, because you want to go forth. You want your campmates to go interact with other camps. That's part of the beauty of Burning Man. If you're always like planning and supporting events that are happening at your camp, then you're missing out on a lot of the magic and what other people are providing too.
Can I add one thing there? I just want to also consider like something that over the years I've also been really mindful of, just resources, like the actual physical things that you need to bring for events that you have, especially if maybe it doesn't happen because playa, or maybe people don't show up as much as you want because playa, right? So if you're going to have this like amazing event and you bring all kinds of alcohol or food, just be really mindful of the resources that you need for it, the timing and the week, and then how you could potentially repurpose that like throughout your events, especially like ideally you have something kind of repeatable. If you're doing more like, one-off or two-offs or something, just consider the resources that you're bringing, because there have been many years when I've had to bring back like coolers full of gross things that we didn't actually get to consume, etc. And we try and we have camp events, but just consider kind of the resources and the volume that you bring there. It's always better to run out early and not leave with things on playa than the other way around. And most people are pretty forgiving.
Except for food and water.
But as evidenced by last year when everyone was stuck for several days, I think we were fine. So
Great. Thanks for that, Molly. Let's talk about how to explore the life cycle of interactivity. How do you program it? How do you staff it? And one of the things that I'll say that I learned, and I often run into a lot of well-meaning camp leads who are business people, and they want to run their camp like a business. And on playa, that's kind of laughable because playa, like you said, Molly. But one of the things that we learned is, if it takes two people to do a volunteer activity, to run an event, that sort of thing, that we always had 4 scheduled. So, somebody got lost or, distracted or those sorts of things, we wouldn't have to scramble as much. Just wondered what other lessons you've learned, how you approach your life cycle of your programming. Who'd like to go first? I feel like Abby and Giovanni probably have a lot to say on this.
Yeah, I can kick things off here. So I guess it also depends on your campsite, camp size, and where you're located. The closer you are to the front, if you're closer to Esplanade, then you know that there's certain expectations for you as an Esplanade camp, for example, or if you're getting a lot of traffic, there's going to be a lot of expectations. But in general, I think the thing that I communicate to my campers in terms of the accountability of interactivity, especially if you're publishing a public event and it's in the booklet and it's in apps and whatnot, where people are super excited to go to your event. And if they go there and nothing's happening, they could be very disappointed. So there's people that are expecting, excited to find your camp and go to your interactivity. And so there's a level of expectations in terms of being reliable, in terms of scheduling. So for our camp, we have two interactivity coordinators. We run a lot of interactivity. So they're the ones kind of planning between the facilitators, the doers, the ones that are doing the actual managing. So if they're managing a smoothie bar, for example, or if they're doing massages or hair washing, the interactivity coordinators are talking with those people to kind of figure out how much they want to do, timing of things, etc. And then we also have they're also doing schedule coordinating, both before Playa to submit to the booklet, as well as on Playa when there are any sort of shifts, changes that come up. And then we also print out that event schedule and have a communication center within our camp where everybody in the camp sees like the camp schedule of what's happening. And then there's also the shifts of the day. And so if someone is out partying too long and they realize like, okay, I'm not going to make this morning shift, they can speak to someone. We actually have this other thing called the Camp Mayor of the Day. And so we have like 7 mayors of the day. So there's one mayor per day. And they're kind of like the front line of defense before me. So all problems don't come to me as the camp lead. And so they're handling inquiries of scheduling and shifts and additions and that kind of thing, and making adjustments. You don't have to have all this rigor. I am definitely one of those business people that likes to put a little bit more structure and rigor behind things. But that's just because we want to be a reliable camp where people know that things are well run. But at the same time, you have to understand like the human side of it and the play. You don't want to overschedule yourself, like Whiskey Jackal was talking about. And you don't want to overly structure things and be too inflexible to the unpredictability of Playa. So you want to kind of plan, you want to be able to plan, but be willing to throw away your plans when things are not going according to plan.
And I always tell campers, 80%, people, even if we could pull off 80%, the other 20% that doesn't happen, nobody really knows. The playa, the other participants don't know. And so, also have that grace again. Abby, go ahead.
Totally. I love all of this, and I feel you about all of the like logistical pieces and all the moving parts, and kind of having to approach that from a certain perspective for like efficiency and communication and just like taking care of like herding all of the cats or beavers or whatever your mascot is. But yeah, it's a task. And the other thing of it, though, I love what you said, Giovanni, about the human element, because that's something that we think about a lot at Beaverton. And as we grow, especially, I kind of like, obviously we want people to have buy-in and we want people to participate and we want people who believe in communal effort. And also it's Burning Man. And, I kind of want us to be, have a robust enough community and a robust enough like level of participation that we can kind of account for like a 20 to 25% fuck off rate, and like just know that that's going to happen and that it's not malicious. And if we have a person or two who is really not participating, I don't want it to make or break us. And so that's something we think about a lot, is like what sustainability looks like for regular beavers, for leaders amongst the beavers. We also have mayors daily, so that it doesn't all fall to like the 1 annual or 2 annual mayors. We call them the mayors of the moment because it's not somebody for like a whole day. It's somebody on shift, basically. And so these are experienced people who are ready to be kind of the go-to person in camp whenever there's anything going on that requires staffing or like an event or a host, or even if things are just like somebody, if something's going wrong, they're the go-to person. So we've got somebody in the morning, the afternoon, the evening, and then overnight. And so that helps kind of like spread the load. And the other thing that I just wanted to mention, and this is part of the gift of being in a legacy camp, we're going to celebrate our 17th burn on Playa this year. And this is my first year as mayor with Beaverton, but I really wanted to share just a really sweet message I got from one of our very first mayors, 15 years ago. And she sent me a message when I told her that I'm mayor this year. And she was like, just keep in mind, Abby, that the first Beaverton was a flagpole in a bucket and a couple of chairs. And so whatever you do, you're already winning. And I really appreciate that like reminder to just keep it real. It's Burning Man. It's going to change every year. And no matter what, like, we are living into the legacy of the leaders and the people who came before us, and we're building it new for the people who will come after us. And also, it's fun. We do really important things out there. We hold really tender spaces for people, and also it's fun and it's Burning Man. And so like that's the number one thing I think about when I think about the life cycle of what we want our events and our camp and our offerings to look like. I just want us to keep it real.
Awesome. Abby, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and collect the questions. We're going to go to Giovanni really quickly for a systems question. And then we're going to come back to you for opening up to all the participants today. Which tools, systems, and pre-work do you implement to make your life, your campers' lives, and your guest experience easier, more impactful, and more fun? Giovanni, I know you had a lot about this, so I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, sure. So I don't know if it's okay to quickly share my screen or something. The visuals help a little bit better. Let me see if I could do that. Yes, I can. Yes. Oop, we're sharing a different thing, but we'll move this other thing. Yeah, so let me hide this. So we use a system that allows our yeah. So I use Google Sheets, and Google Sheets is just spreadsheet organizational tool. And so what we do in our camp is we use this to manage all the camp's information. This comes from starting with a timeline. So we'll have a timeline of events of what's happening in what important dates are coming up for the camp. And then we have like a section for all the teams in the camp and who are the team leads for those areas. And then we have like a page called Team Summary, where I can go to a specific team and see who's in charge of that team, who are the team members, etc. We have some arrival time data of like who's coming in what vehicle, and what role they're a part of. We also keep track of work access passes and how much have been allocated, how much do we have left, who's coming in on what particular day. And then this is our interactivity calendar, where we have like a schedule of events, on what day, what location. And so we can see all this information for what's happening in terms of what's happening in the dome, what's happening in the stretch tent, and for how long, to make sure that there aren't any conflicts, as well as when lunchtime is, because we share some of the infrastructure. And then we have like a database of all the campers. And so that database we use to keep track of who's in the camp, who's doing what. We have this contribution ratio, which basically aggregates all the tasks that we have in the camp. So we listed out every single thing that's required in the camp to run the camp, about 300 tasks. Not everyone sees this, only those that have brains that have enough wrinkles in it can process the full spreadsheet. But this just allows us to have like everything that we could possibly organize, who's coming in when, at what time, by what vehicle, what team are they on, what role are they are. And we also expanded on the Animalia theme. and gave everybody a particular spirit animal that would be their archetype. So we had peacocks who were the performers, deers who were the spirit guides, singers who were the camp bards. And we actually printed out tokens or mementos and gave everybody necklaces that were their spirit animal last year so that people can know who their tribe was and who their cliques were. And then we also had like a fun personality test and gave everybody elemental signs kind of based on avatar. So we didn't want to put all the fiery people together. We blended a little bit of some fire people, some water people, and we also staffed particular teams with the right personality balance. And we put so much thought into organizing that allowed us to put people in the right position to shine. And so that's a little bit about some of the systems that we use in our own camp. It doesn't have to be as complex as this. We went a little bit overboard, but for us, it's fun to just see how much we can tame the chaos. And then once we get on Playa, things get even more crazy. But that's a little preview of what we do to organize our camp and the systems that run Nobo House.
Who has spreadsheet envy after seeing that? Raise your hand. Great, fantastic. Thank you so much, Giovanni. Awesome. Albie, we want to go over to you and field some of the questions from our participants today.
Yeah, totally. So I'm gonna jump in with the ones that have not been responded to in the chat first. So somebody was curious about a fire lane and like when you're designing, thinking about what placement is looking for as far as a fire lane. Does anybody want to speak to that?
Dilemma, can you answer that? From camp support?
Generally just visualize, could a truck drive to the back of your camp, a fire truck? And often these are dual use. If you're using any of the site services that have to come and dump, can they fit one of their big trucks through it? And you'll learn very quickly what's big enough to fit one of those big trucks through or not. The real trick is keeping it clear. So there's no use having a fire lane if it just gets filled up with stuff. So you kind of have to be diligent about with your own campers and whatnot of keeping it clear. Make sure there's some sort of easily removed barrier so someone doesn't try to park a car there, because that happens a lot. If you're doing an event, make sure that you've got a couple of people whose tasks are just making sure people don't park their bikes in that area. But just diligence and a common sense, and you learn quickly to make sure it's really well marked off. You can't easily get to it, but it is easy enough to move that thing so that the fire truck can get through.
Amazing. And I just dropped a couple of resources in the chat related to that, including the camp resource guide and the camp support page. And we've got a couple more comments for folks who were curious about that. Thinking about how trucks often need to drive through the camp, not just pull in and out. So where you place your fire lane according to that. Cool. All right. And we've got a follow-up question. Is a turnaround required, or can it be a single lane? I read that the ability to exit without reversing or turning a sharp corner is required. Yeah, I think that question is probably in the resources, the specifics to that answer. Moving on from Mellow Monroe, we've got a question about, does anyone have any recommendations on how to prevent lights from being run over during the burn? And we had another question about lights also from Kimberly, about planning to upgrade our night lighting this year. In the past, they've just had rope lighting along the top or the roof and lit their camp sign. Can we please share some tips on how lighting can improve the night flow in and out of your camp, both for fun and safety? I feel like you've touched on this a little bit, Coop.
A little bit. We had giant black lights that were on poles, nothing on the ground, that sort of thing. And it took, a week to build that. Not everyone can do that. One of the things that Ribbons was talking about the other day is how to really make it welcoming, and particularly at night with lighting, that sort of thing. Do you want to address that, Ribbon?
Yeah, sure. So we have lighting from a lot of different perspectives. So we actually use these small, cheap little RGB addressable floodlights that we put on the ground. One of the nice things about our layout is there are a lot of angles, so we can kind of hide lights on the ground in ways that people will not run them over. They would have to run into our camp in order to do it. So I think that thinking about the placement of lighting is really important. If you can't do that, then yeah, definitely trying to hang it from different parts of the structure, but you can look at lots of little cheap floodlighting that is very easy on the eyes for people, especially at night, to come into your camp.
And I'd like to make a recommendation for these solar powered lights. They make them in string lights, they make them in little flamingos, they make them all sorts of things. You don't have to power them, you don't have to like have a generator for them. I especially if you've got any like lines running, something that someone could smack themselves into in the dark, just put a little cheap $5 solar powered string of lights along it and they're not going to bang into it. Especially smaller camps can do a lot of lighting with these little cheapy solar power things.
Thank you, Dr. Dilemma. We also have a great question from Emma, kind of the other side of that. My camp wants to step up our daytime design for this year. Any tips on making frontage really stand out during the day?
I'll take that for a little bit. I think really important, playa, dust happens. And so, don't be afraid of color. Go really bold. I will tell you that all the Dayglow stuff that we had, every time we would have to do new, because by the end of the week, the sun had bleached it all out, or it was beige again. And so what really made us stand out was really bold colors. And you can do that in a number of different ways. It doesn't have to be Dayglow. But the main thing about if you walk around during the day, a lot of RVs are gray. The ground is beige. A lot of camo equipment and that sort of thing out there is beige. And so you really want something that if you want people to really feel welcome, it has to stand out from the beige. That's the first thing. And then from there, you can add to that. But that's where I would start. Anybody else want to jump in on that?
Our camp has a big beige, originally 42-foot trailer, and we all got together one day and we took Comfort and Joy's advice and brightest colors we could, giant flamingos on it. If you can't paint something that you own that looks boring, and if you have that boring that you could paint, if you got a cargo container or something like that, and it's yours, paint the crap out of it. It's an easy way to get lots of color. If you can't paint over something like a U-Haul truck or something, find something like a canvas that you can paint and just bring out and do over that. You can get so much done so cheaply just by throwing copious amounts of paint either on it or on a canvas, and you don't have to pay a lot of money to like bring a sculpture or something out there.
Yeah, just to kind of echo what y'all are saying, we basically have like custom printed curtains to some degree, kind of like fencing. It's cover up the cars, put everyone's eyes on the prize, put everyone's eyes on the frontage that you actually want them to go to. Whether you're doing that through bright colors or something else, just think about ways that you can cut off parts of your camp that aren't interactive and focus everyone to that.
Yeah, same. We do a lot of like canvas, and I will say canvas, do not paint on tarps and bring it to the playa because they generally move everywhere. So if you're new and coming, canvas is your friend. Bright colors, and then even just like pinch clamps or solid ways to or you can grommet them and like bungee them onto like a roof rack or a barn or something, maybe cut some slats in it so the wind doesn't carry it away. But fabric, especially brightly painted, can really be your friend too and get quite a bit of mileage.
Next question, Abby.
Amazing. We also have a question from Ingrid, and we kind of started touching on this about like Riven, what you were saying about how to guide people to your interactivity. Ingrid's wondering, any guidance on signage, do's and don'ts, size, location, repeated on multiple sides, etc. Thank you.
I'm happy to take this. So for Doggenheim, we have big sign that kind of is above our camp. We want it to be welcoming. We want people to be able to use it as a beacon to figure out where they are. We also bring a sandwich board every year just to say whatever our events are, like the who, what, when, where. Good luck getting printed in it. Like I love the idea, I love the concept. We've had events printed in there, but they literally don't have enough space for all of the events on Playa. So like bring a sandwich board, bring something where you can like actually put things out to the community in different areas, especially if you're on a corner or something. I think that you just kind of want to be loud and draw attention to what's going on at your camp.
And if you have space and resource, a large calendar, like if you have ongoing events or recurring events or something where you want people to kind of bookmark your camp, if you have a calendar that they can reference or write things down or take a photo of or whatever, that's really helpful too.
Amazing. And I think
I know a
we've
lot
got
of
time.
camps, when they look at signage, just to throw in their alley, sometimes you have to think about where you're going to place your signage. If you're going to place it right along the road, and if it's perpendicular to the road, you do want signage on both sides because somebody's going to be driving by both ways. Sometimes you want to put it, a little off the road and on the side of a tent or that sort of thing, and you only need one side. But even that, it's harder to see unless you're doing some of what Riven was saying about really directing people's eyes to a place. And so you want to think about not only the frontage, but what's beside you. If you've got your back of house is along the roads, you want to make sure that either you have signage there or you have some sort of art there, so it doesn't look like it's just the land of grays again, that sort of thing. So lots of things. I will tell you, I worked at the camp. God, I can't remember their name, but they made this giant camp that looked like a state park sign. And they built it to dig 2 giant holes in the playa. And when we got there, we're like, well, you probably shouldn't be digging those holes. And so we had to adapt the sign at that point. We just used rebar on the ground and then zip tied the sign to those rebar. And they were surprised it held it up, but it stayed up all week. And so I think you definitely plan for the best sign you can have, but also you're going to probably have to be flexible when you arrive on playa.
Thank you, Coop. I think we probably have time for one more question really quickly. How do you judge how much to bring for an event if you're a new camp? This is from Silver.
Yeah, I can. Or Molly, you look like you're in.
Go for it, Giovanni.
Yes. So yeah, this is a tricky problem. Even us with all our spreadsheet power have not been able to fully figure this out. So for example, if you're a food-oriented camp or a drink-oriented camp, there's different portion sizings that you can use. Some of the food-oriented stuff has predetermined portion sizing. But it's a tricky equation in terms of buying in bulk. For us, we do a lot of our bulk shopping at Costco or Restaurant Depot. And so you can get a large volume for relatively cheap if you go to these like bulk distributors. And then you're figuring out how much interactivity are you doing per day and how much expected amount of people are you serving per day. So if we're serving 100 smoothies per day for 5 days, we'll need 500 smoothies. And then we have to do the math in terms of like, okay, we need this many strawberries or this much almond milk, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then what happens is like someday you may get a slow day. So you're like, all right, we have to put these things away. Or some days you may get a super busy day. So you're eating into the next day's schedule. So I think it's coming to a acceptance that you're never going to fully get it right. At the end of the day, you're trying to reduce waste. So kind of going with like a little bit above the bare minimum that you need so that you're going to get at least be able to bring this offering and get rid of all your offering without generating too much waste money or waste food is how I kind of usually approach it.
Did you want to add that, Molly?
Just, yeah, basically as a rule of thumb, I always, if I calculate for how many maybe I want to serve when it pertains to food, I go almost half of that because I don't know if it's everyone's experience, but I eat far less than I bring to the playa or I intend to eat. I think if it's something like shelf stable, if it's like alcohol or some sort of like snack, you can then kind of over index because you can always hopefully take it back with you. And so I would say kind of plan for anything perishable to be about half of what you normally would, and then everything else more or less right on.
Great. Thank you so much for that. We have run out of time. What we'd like everyone to do today, if you can, put your biggest takeaway in the chat so that we can see that as we say goodbye. We want to thank Dr. Dilemma, thank Abby, Giovanni, Molly, Riven. Thank you so much. Thank you all for your questions. We hope we answered most of those. If you have questions, please bombard Dr. Dilemma after this at the camp support team to answer those questions, or you can reach out to any of us. Thank you so much. We'll throw it back over to Dr. Dilemma.
Also, everybody,
Thank you.
I dropped in the chat a link to the feedback form.
Great.
Sorry,
Oh
Dr.
man, I could do this all day. I hate to leave you guys. This panel was amazing. Go to Hive. I found that like some of the Facebook groups are just a snarky mess now, and Hive is really taking off. There's a lot of resources there. You can interact with each other. You can try to get things going there. Right, you can definitely write into the help desk, but talk to each other. And just another plug for the, I think you still can get tickets to the happy hour tonight if you are in the Bay Area. So thank you again, everyone. We're gonna wave.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. See you on the playa. The man
See
burns
y'all
in
on the playa.
167 days.
Woo!